Section86.com. We're changing the world of podcasting one show at a time.
86 Productions.
Take what you wanna take. Don't leave me here. Lasting leap years ever. Your fear of the one and only love.
Hello and welcome to Off the Mark, the best podcast providing the most in-depth insight and analysis into the world of professional wrestling. On today's show, we have Aaron, Roger, and Doug to join Andrew as we discuss this month's view from the turnbuckle. So, Hall of Fame. Aaron, who are the newest nominees?
Yeah, so we have DX, Honky Tonk Man, Harlem Heat, and Tori Wilson. So the interesting thing about this is DX it is including Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Chyna, the New Age Outlaws, and X-Pac. This will actually make Shawn Michaels the second two-time Hall of Famer. And with Harlem Heat, this will make Booker T a two-timer as well. So, DX and Harlem Heat, Honky Tonk Man definitely deserve to be in. Tori Wilson, I guess based on what they have done in the past with some of their women Hall of Famers, I guess she deserves to be in. But either way, shaping up to be in an okay class compared to what they have left.
I mean, this is great. This is an easy way to fix the Google problem that Triple H has with looking up Chyna and getting her also into the Hall of Fame. I'm very happy for Honky Tonk Man. I enjoyed him. I think he's one of the best IC champions ever. Harlem Heat, a lot more in WCW. I never even saw them as a great tag team, but you know what? Booker T is great, so why not put him in? Tori Wilson, I'm okay with. I thought she did a lot for the Divas evolution. She was a decent wrestler. She was very into the storylines and everything like that. And she was a crowd pleaser. So I have no problem with Tori going in also.
Me and Doug disagree massively on Tori Wilson. I think she basically represented everything that was wrong with women's wrestling back in the day. She was attractive. She couldn't wrestle to save her life. She was a hot blonde who I think she was a little bit lighter, shall we say, in WCW than she was over in the E. Really, in general, I'm not a big fan of this class. Harlem Heat was a fine tag team. I remember them in WCW. I wouldn't say they're Hall of Fame worthy. Booker T is most certainly Hall of Fame worthy. There's no question about that. But Stevie Ray is meh. I don't particularly think he was anything special. DX themselves. DX, the original DX, I would have been fine with. Sean, Hunter, and Triple H, Sean, Hunter, and Chyna, we're fine. I'm fine with that being a Hall of Fame class. If you really wanted to get her in there and solve the Google problem, because Sean and Hunter are both Hall of Fame worthy. Chyna on her own merits, in my opinion, based on the fact that she was kind of the first woman you saw compete against men. She was a female manager. There's a lot of things that she did that I think she justifies being in there. Road Dogg, X-Pac, and Billy Gunn are not Hall of Famers. I'm sorry. At no point in time were they ever the best tag team, were they ever best mid-card. The Road Dogg was a fun talker, but these guys were mediocre as can be. Very similar to Harlem Heat. Honky Tonk Man, I'm fine with. I thought he was a great IC champion. He was perfect for that era, but this is just a very average class. But like you guys said earlier, this is good for what they have left. The reason you have so little left is that you jumped the gun and put everybody in when you didn't need to. Hasn't Edge been retired for about 5 years, 6 years? This should have been about the perfect time to put him in, but instead
he's already in.
He is in. You rushed and put him in the year after he retired instead of giving it some time so that you would have some people available. So now you're doubling up when you shouldn't have to. Kurt Angle hasn't even retired and you already put him in. We're running out of people worth putting in here shortly.
Yeah, not only that, I think that, they did rush a lot of people in way too fast. But I think that they should also start limiting how many people are going to be in. At some point, you're going to have to. I like Shane Helms when he was in WCW, but realistically, I don't see him as a Hall of Famer. But you're going to have to think about that for a while. Is he going to go in? X-Pac should never be in. The fact that he's going in, it's horrible. And that he's going to have to give his own speech about being.
Are we talking about the Hall of Fame or Chyna?
I was just gonna say about being in China, and also, because he was in China, and then then he dated China as well. But I'll also pass around. But the thing is, I just don't like the fact that Triple H is going in with that as well. With them, because did they bring Legacy in already?
No, Legacy is not it.
Okay, they're going to be the next going.
Well, I think that gets to the bigger problem, and we don't need a discussion about it right now. But I will just say we talk about this every year. You're putting in way too many people, way too fast. And when you start putting it in groups, I think it dilutes it, because realistically, when you look at DX, that is what, 6 people or so, 7 people, and you're putting them in. That's your first announcement is 7 people. And then after that, your next announcement is, you have a couple of singles, and then you have a tag team, like, and somebody's already in. So like, what's the point in that? Like if you want to put Harlem Heat in, just put them in when Booker T went in, if that was the case. And so that can get to a bigger discussion.
But that's a different. Yeah, that could be, because I would say Stevie Ray would never be in.
Probably
if it wasn't
not, but
for
as
Booker
Harlem
T.
Heat, maybe.
But
So,
Harlem Heat also won a ton of tag titles. So, but that was WCW.
10, I think,
10.
right? 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
WCW.
But so, every month we have to talk about it. Unfortunately, King Kong Bundy passed away. Now, this was definitely before a lot of our eras. Some of us weren't even alive when he main evented with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 2. Andy, do you have any memories of King Kong Bundy? Was there anything that you kind of remember about him? No,
not really. And, I just remember that he was there. Then I just remember him coming out with the green ton and ripping.
Wasn't that George the Animal Steel?
Yeah, that was
He
Animal
was-
Steel.
No one saw the
Yeah,
tweet
but,
by Enzo. No one
Yeah, I
saw
was gonna
it.
say, yeah, he was. Talking about
okay.
That's why. What an idiot. Yeah, I he was one of those guys that just. I mean, he was there. I remember he was a big guy, and he was scary looking. But that's pretty much all I remember him, because he was on his way out when we started watching wrestling. He was pretty much getting on his way out, and then he just wasn't there. So. But yeah, I don't have a lot of memories with him.
Yeah, and I don't either. I think the one thing that is interesting though is when you look back at that time, there's a lot of emphasis on the character aspect of it and having very, very different people. You look at a King Kong Bundy, and in contrast to a Hogan, a Macho, a Roddy Piper, he looked very different. He was a very different character during that time, and they obviously built him up as a monster heel. He was the first one to do the count to 5 for me, which I know Big E had taken up that mantle
Yes,
in
he did.
NXT much later on. But he was one of the first to do that. I think the first to do that. So he was a character during a time when in the 80s when they needed characters, and just like with anything else, it's always sad whenever a wrestler dies and somebody from the 80s and somebody from our childhood, or somebody right before our childhood passes away.
The only thing I can remember him from is the WrestleMania 2 match, and just looking and seeing how big he was and how that was probably his highlight of his whole career. But it was a good match, I thought, at least, and somebody that could actually compete physically with Hulk Hogan. It's sad to hear him, and I think there's some of I know me and my other friends just like we're actually very surprised that he was actually still alive. So good for him, and the fact that he was able to stay, and he died at a relatively old age. So especially when you're talking about wrestling, so he had a good life, and hopefully his memory will last.
I echo Dog's thoughts completely, 100%. I honestly had thought he had passed away quite some time. And I say that with no sarcasm, not to be flippant in the slightest. I simply thought he had passed away a long time ago. So I'm glad he lived his life to the fullest. I'm glad he got to main event at WrestleMania. It was obviously before my time. I would have been only 2 years old when he main evented WrestleMania 2. But may he rest in peace. He lived what seems like a very long life. And unlike a lot of wrestlers from his time who died way, way too young, I feel like he got to enjoy his life.
Well, we had something interesting happen. We, of course, TJP and Ty Dillinger were released, but something interesting though that's going on is that Gallows and Anderson have not re-signed their contracts. Are they going to be just like TJP and 10, like on their way out, or what do you think is going to happen with these guys, Aaron?
Yeah, I think that realistically, when they came in pretty hot and heavy. They won, I believe, the Raw tag titles fairly quickly during their time there, and then since then, kind of nothing. They got teamed with AJ, which was a smart move. And then they did a little bit of teaming with Finn, but for the most part, they've just been floundering. And you see what they did over in Japan. Carl Anderson was one of the main reasons that you had Bullet Club there. They actually took the name. He was Machine Gun Carl Anderson. So, his name was one of the reasons that they came up with the Bullet Club name. And you go to WWE, and he's somebody who I think is good on the mic. I think he has a lot of charisma, and they do nothing with him. So realistically, why not go down to AEW and be a part of that tag team scene? Both of them can go there. Carl Anderson is the name that he can use. It's not his real name, but it's the name that he was using in Japan. He can use it in America. You have Luke Gallows. He goes by Doc Gallows or something else. So you can have them go somewhere else, go to AEW and work their wonders there.
They're definitely got to be on their way out because they didn't even you haven't seen them on TV for a long time. And it's also rumored they are no longer on the road. They're not showing up to house shows. They had their one little show of the botches that got pulled already, even though I thought that was actually a pretty funny show. But you know what? I hope that they do something with AEW. They've got a lot of friends there, or go back to New Japan, where they were mega stars, and continue to show that they are an elite tag team.
I mean, I will say this from a purely creative standpoint. I totally think it is in their best interest to leave and go to AEW. From a financial standpoint, depending on where they are in their careers, how happy they are, they may just be content to coast. You know, they are both older. I know they're in their 30s to 40s, and they're collecting a good paycheck by pretty much doing nothing in the WWE. And depending on what their plan is for, how long they want to stay in the wrestling business, whether or not they want to go home, it might just be time to be like, hey, we're just content riding out a few years and then we're done. So either decision, I'll be happy for them. I'd like to see them in AEW from a fan standpoint, but I wouldn't blame them if they say, I'll just keep collecting this paycheck and then I'll get out before my body gets destroyed.
Yeah, that's I actually think that they're waiting to resign because I bet they want to stay with WWE. And I think the reason why they want to stay is because they can coast. And they, as soon as AEW's TV contract is, they let everyone know, hey, we have a TV contract now. I bet you anything they're going to be like, we need this amount, and we're going to work less dates. Otherwise, we're going to AEW, and WWE will cave. And I think it's because they know that, oh crap, these guys can do something there. We can't do anything with them because we don't know what we're doing. But in something else that I think is interesting. So it looks like leukemia had to put over Roman Reigns, and Roger. No, in all seriousness, though, Roman's back. He did beat it. So, Roger, are you happy to see Roman back?
Look, first and foremost, ignoring the wrestling ramifications, I am happy that he beat leukemia. I'm not his biggest fan of the character. However, the person, cancer sucks. So good for him. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to treat Roman Reigns, the cancer survivor. I don't know if they are going to try to push him as the super babyface. Will they cool him off a little bit and maybe let his storylines be more organic, or they just try to rocket him back to the top? Right now he's getting the reactions that they've desperately wanted for years. However, if you basically pull the rug out from Seth Rollins to try to get Roman over, people aren't stupid. He will get booed again for that. So if you do it right, yeah, it could be fine, but I don't have the kind of faith in WWE to properly book the storyline, and I have the odd feeling that we're going to get his cancer survivor story pushed down our throats to the point where I'm just going to be sick of it, like most Roman Reigns things. So we'll see, but I see this being a feel-good story up until the point in which I feel sick myself.
I am happy for the Samoan named Joe. I'm glad that
the U.S. champion?
No, the Samoan named Joe. Not Samoa Joe.
Oh.
Although I'm happy for him too. But I agree with Roger in the fact that I don't know what they're going to do with him and how they're going to, and they probably are. They're just going to push Roman being in remission from cancer down our throats to a point where, I hate to say it, but I could see some of the universe cheering for cancer.
You know what the sad thing is? I actually, in a way, agree with that, but I don't think there's anyone out there who would actually be like, all right, we're going to say this, because they'd be like, I don't want to say it, but,
Well, that's why I was hesitant with it, but in that aspect, I don't know. It's
I think you guys are overestimating the intelligence of drunken fans, let alone drunken wrestling fans. I've heard them say worse things. I mean, I'm being truthful. I've heard them say I've heard Benoit jokes. So
I said something about Storm, but
you actually said his name, Roger.
Oh my God!
Don't say it 3 times. We don't say it 3 times. I definitely agree with you, Roger. I wholeheartedly echo all your thoughts on the situation. Don't shove it down our throats. Let it be organic. And you know what? You have somebody who was able to beat cancer, which I think we're all happy about. And if you are able to put them in interesting storylines, so be it. Then we could have a superstar on our hands, and a good one at that. So, Andy, moving on to something that we did not talk about last month, and so instead we kind of waited, so we have quite a bit to go over. The Raw Women's title picture. So just to kind of get everybody up to speed, Becky was arrested, and then she was suspended for 60 days, and then she kept showing up, and eventually she got put into a title match, or I'm sorry, she got put into a match with Charlotte where she would get added to the match of Charlotte versus Ronda, and Ronda came in, attacked Becky to make sure that it was a three-way. With all the stuff that's going on right now, what are your thoughts overall about the Raw Women's title picture?
It's very interesting for a change, which is something that doesn't really happen too much, especially in WWE. So the fact that they made this interesting, and also, I believe this will close the show out, which I would never think a women's match would ever close out WrestleMania. This could do it, and this could be a huge match. And as we can see, Becky can go, Charlotte can go, and surprisingly, Ronda has just adapted super fast. So all three of them could go, and it just wouldn't surprise me if they're all talking about, we should do this here. I would not be shocked if they're not talking about the match already. Like, we'll do this, and this. And we need to do it this here because it makes sense storyline-wise. And I think that actually does benefit them. And I think that's the biggest thing. They can sit there and go back and forth on Twitter. And I'm just waiting for the day that ESPN covers it. Like, ESPN actually covers it. So when their tweets that they're going back and forth, that'll be interesting. I'm still shocked about how this is probably, I'm going to flat out say, this is probably the most interesting thing going on in wrestling right now. I'm sorry, on Raw. And that says a lot. Because I can't say the most interesting because I still think the whole thing what they're doing with Kofi is really interesting. But the Becky thing, the Becky, Charlotte, and Ronda thing it's there. It's something to definitely discuss.
I don't know how I can really properly describe this because I'm very excited for the match. Like, I'm really looking forward to Charlotte, Ronda, and Becky because, like you said, all of them can go, all of them can wrestle. It should be, potentially as good as the WrestleMania 32 triple threat that we got to see, but this one could be in the main event. Having said that, this may be the worst booked program that I have ever seen. Like, this is in that discussion of, like, what in the world is going on? Everything past Becky winning the Rumble and the stare down the next night, which was great, has been convoluted. It has been stupid. It has been pointless. It has been illogical. Like, I have been, like, I had to take notes to figure out how we got from where we were to here because it doesn't make sense. Like, they took the most circular path possible. Becky getting suspended. Charlotte gets randomly added to the match. Ronda forfeits her title. Wait, the next week she just shows up and gets her title back for cursing out Stephanie McMahon. That's bizarre. Okay, Becky is given a shot into the match. Wait, she wins by disqualification because Ronda attacks her and therefore creates a situation for herself in which she can lose her championship without being defeated. What? Like, this is so bad. And especially when you think about there was such a simple route to get to where we need. If you needed to insert Charlotte, all you had to do was Becky confronts Ronda on Monday. On Tuesday, Charlotte comes out and says, I'm the rightful winner of the Royal Rumble because Becky was not scheduled to be in that match. I was the last person standing. I deserve a match at Chamber or Fastlane. She beats Becky. She inserts herself into the triple threat. There we go. And instead, they had to bring the McMahons into it. They had to just throw Charlotte into it. I mean, it's so bad that if this match wasn't between three pretty good in Ronda to excellent in Charlotte and Becky, I would have no interest in this match. I am interested in the match despite what they have tried to build to.
Roger, you know what? That would have been really interesting. Or if somehow Charlotte cheated to win at Fastlane.
Sure. Totally fine that she rolls her up and hits her in the back of the knee and wins with a dirty pinfall. Great. And the other thing is, too, is that, like, this is what bothers me. You had Charlotte come out and say the reason that Becky was not supposed to be in the Rumble. Like, why has Charlotte, Carmella, and Lana not said anything about this? Like, it's just very strange.
What Roger said was exactly what I was about to. This has been so confusing and overdone. The fact that everything is going every which way, we're trying to throw everything at you and trying to make this as exciting or just desperate, I would say, writing. where they're trying to throw more and more and go over and over the top. This was an easy setup. This was easy. If you want it to be a three-way, great. Make it a three-way, just like Roger said. But this has just been, okay, we're going to take the belt away from you, and now they're going to fight for the belt at Fastlane. I mean, we did our predictions for Fastlane, and how many times did we have to change our predictions due to the fact that they changed the match or something along those lines? This is horrible. This just shows how disorganized the WWE is and everything. I am still excited for the match. I can't wait to see this match. I'm very excited that I do believe that this will be the main event and should be the main event. But getting there has been so confusing, and we're still 4 weeks away? How else are they going to screw this up?
I can give you some ideas.
No, let's not say it because we all know WWE listens.
I will say
Aaron,
I definitely
have a
echo
question
your
for
thoughts,
you.
Doug. Roger, your question?
Yeah. So, and I'm not saying this joking as much as I love to tease you about Triple H, but considering where we're at in women's wrestling, how much credit do you think him and I guess NXT maybe as a whole deserves for us being in this spot? Because I don't think this happens without Charlotte and the horsewomen basically showing that women are worthy of a main event spot, because they are the ones that basically that's where Give Divas a chance started from. They were tearing it up in NXT while the Bellas were wasting everybody's times in 7-minute bra and panties matches. So, going 5 years later, I want to say, that's a pretty impressive achievement to be going from afterthoughts to potentially main event WrestleMania.
Well, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of other people, though, that do deserve some credit as well. You take a look at Beth Phoenix, who was somebody that was keeping the division afloat when it was a lot of just, blondes and supermodels. Then, you go to Natalia, who also helped out a little bit. AJ Lee was a really big one who helped out. She was the one that I felt started the Give Divas a chance. From there, obviously the women at NXT who are working their butts off in order to do well. That was due to Triple H, and then coming up on the main roster and then given that opportunity. But I think the most important aspect is this. Becky Lynch was able to take her character, who was a fun-loving and fan favorite, kind of like a Sting, and turn her into a Stone Cold Steve Austin like character. This was somebody who wasn't taking crap from anybody, who was coming out and taking names. She came out and attacked Charlotte, got cheered. She came out, turned on the fans. They cheered her even more. And then it was we don't care what you're doing. And they realized, the character that Becky is now, we can do something more with this. And they did. And the visual of her with the blood running down her face was amazing. The things that Becky was able to do, I think, also stand out. So Triple H definitely deserves credit. No doubt about it. But I think that there's a lot of other players that are involved too. And Andy, you have something.
I do not think here's what I think happened. The women in NXT were just kicking butt. And then all of a sudden Triple H gets the idea, hey, why don't we bring these gals up? I mean, they may help the women's division out. And they brought a couple up, and then NXT women's division still was tearing it up. They brought some more up, and then it's like, oh crap, the NXT women's division is the real reason why everything's going great. But I mean, you got to think, if you go back 2 years to WrestleMania 33 with that three-way, should have been a four-way, but they kept Becky down still. If you remember,
33, I thought was a four-way. Wasn't it Sasha, Charlotte, Nia, and Bailey? Wasn't that a four-way?
I'm thinking of 32 then.
Well, 32, it was Charlotte,
Sasha,
and Becky.
That's what I was. I'm sorry, I was referring to that one. So, but you still had Bailey down there. You still had Alexa Bliss at that time. In Alexa Bliss, well, that's a debate. But for the most part, though, I think it was like, wow, they had a 30-minute Iron Woman match, and they tore it up down there. And oh crap, they can tear it down there. Let's see if it'll translate to the main roster. And when they split the roster, I think that's when women's wrestling was like, oh, this is interesting. We got some decent people. But I think it was kind of like, oh, it happened. Great. And that was it. I think and I think Triple H will take the credit for it, but I don't believe he was the real reason. I think it's the women wrestlers that did it. Because
you're all missing the main person who is responsible for all of this, and that is
Ronda
Stephanie
Rousey.
McMahon for inventing women's wrestling.
Good God. So mad. Where's Savage right now to slap her?
Hey, maybe he's responsible for Stephanie being so good at women's wrestling.
Or maybe he's responsible for Steph. So, real question though. We were at 32. That was a very bad card. There were two standout matches though. One of them was the excellent ladder match, and the other one was the women's match, which I argued was the best match of the night. Is it possible that them showcase, and I've always said the best match at a WrestleMania beats the best matches somewhere else. Is it possible that that night is what proved to Vince and all of the power players that these women could deliver on a big stage? Because if that match flopped, they may have gotten a second opportunity. Like that was their first big opportunity to go since maybe Trish versus Mickey back at 22. Like it had been a long time since they had a really high profile match that I can.
Yeah, potentially.
In that case, I mean, when you think about it, realistically, when was the last good women's match at WrestleMania before that? I mean, you really had to like reach on certain things besides Mickey James and Trish Stratus.
Trish.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. Weren't they doing like women's battle royals that were won by Santino?
Santina.
And Playboy Pillow. I mean, post Mickey and Trish, it had turned into a very bad Divas division. I mean, you were doing Playboy Pillow fights and battle royals, and I think it was like Ashley, what was her name? Masano, whatever. She was in these matches. You would have Marina Menounos. I mean, it was really, the Bellas obviously were a focal point, which tells you how bad that was. There was Kelly. I mean, you basically had nothing but models who were learning how to wrestle. You didn't have any wrestlers. And so the division stunk. I mean, just plain and simple. Outside of the names that you guys mentioned, Beth, Natty, and AJ Lee, maybe there was one more. And Melina was pretty good.
Melina and Caitlyn.
Caitlyn was solid, yeah. But I mean, you compare those to what we have now, it's just such a difference in talent and push, and even the type of women. We talked about this years ago. The women right now are not hot-looking women who are learning to wrestle. These are fantastic women's wrestlers, period. End of discussion. Looks aside, they can go. And that is something that in the past was not true.
And look at the thing is, I feel bad for someone like Beth Phoenix and AJ Lee. When you think about it, they could go, but they did not have really anyone. They didn't have a good dance partner. And now it's like, I'm going to say now, Beth Phoenix will be wrestling at WrestleMania. I'm just going to say that right now. So that's something that, she may be able to go against someone, which if somehow they could do Beth Phoenix versus Asuka, which would make no sense whatsoever. So it's going to happen. That would be an interesting match, especially if they're like, hey, we're going to give you 15 minutes. But of course, like I said, they're not going to like give them 15 minutes. We'll give you 5 minutes. Curtain to curtain. It takes 2 minutes to walk out there. So, but yeah. Anyways, let's move on to the WWE title picture because I think we can talk about that forever. Kofi was kicked out of the title match because he had to go against the Bar at Fastlane. Interesting. So then they decide, hey, there's still going to be a three-way for the title, and Mustafa Ali comes out, and that's, then of course Daniel Bryan wins. That was pretty much it. Weird, but Aaron, did you think that this was the right move?
Well, it's definitely a story. I think I had said in our chat that this was WCW 2000 Russo level booking because during the time, McMahon said, "Oh, Kofi, we're going to add you to the match," like midway through the pay-per-view. That was just I was thinking, wow, WWE is really trying to screw things up here. And luckily it was kind of a swerve. Having Kevin Owens come back, and they obviously didn't want him to job. They wanted to make him feel special still. And so that's why you added Mustafa Ali to the match, which was incredibly random. Ali didn't do anything to earn a shot there. I think that when the pop, I think people were expecting maybe a little bit of a pop when his music hit. And I think a lot of people were just like, huh? And then,
admittedly, he was supposed to be in the chamber, so one could argue that this was his shot that he had missed.
True, you could argue that. It was still like a little not completely convoluted, but it was kind of convoluted. I feel, people were chanting for Kofi, which is the reaction WWE is trying to get. Right, WWE at this point in time, right now, is trying to get people really behind Kofi. I think that they took a look at what happened with Daniel Bryan, and I, still maintain the WWE did not expect that to happen, that they were not expecting the fans to, go for Bryan as big as they were. I mean, even CM Punk had mentioned that. So I think they're trying to do this, trying to manufacture it with Kofi and trying to make people chant for Kofi, which is fine. I like Kofi, and I think that it's okay to do. with Kofi getting put into the title picture, he's going through a gauntlet match. It was a 2-on-1 handicap. Now he's going to be in a gauntlet match. He's going to have to survive. I think it was like 6 or 7 people in order to get a shot at Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. Right now in the cards, at some point in time, they have to do Kofi versus Daniel Bryan. I'm assuming it's going to be at WrestleMania. I'm assuming that they want to put it on the grandest stage of them all to give Kofi the ability to win the title and have that really feel good moment. So I don't know if that's what they're going to be doing, but if it is, I think it could be pretty good.
I think they should have had every McMahon screw Kofi out of a title shot, because you had Vince take him out of the first one. I would have loved to seen Shane take him out of the second one, and just keep pushing it all the way to SummerSlam, where he'll finally earn that right to wrestle. I really think this was more of a desperation. We don't know how to write. Kevin Owens needs to come back, but we're injury prone here or a little lacking here. I think it would have been even funnier if they would have, or better if they would have just kept Kevin Owens off scene. When are you coming back, and had him be a surprise entry at the pay-per-view itself. And if you want to keep Kofi to be your WrestleMania matchup for Bryan, then so be it. But you know what? I'm happy for Kofi. I think he should have gotten a title way back in when he was feuding with Randy Orton before that whole mix-up. But we'll see how it goes.
Why have we not learned from the mistakes of the past, which I guess you could apply to WWE across the board? But why did we have to have Mustafa Ali get Rey Mysterio'd?
Oh my gosh.
It's true. I mean, I'm sorry. That's the exact same way I felt when it was like, oh, this is how I felt when Ray came out in 2014. Like, you're not who we were. Honestly, that should have been Sami Zayn. Like, if you actually wanted the crowd to be interested and that would have been a better dynamic, Sami comes out, Kevin Owens wants to know what he's doing there. I'm interested. And now, credits to those three for getting people back into the match when they were clearly invested in Kofi. But if you're going to screw the clear face in this situation in Kofi, you replace him with a heel, unless you want the face to be overshadowed, because that's a heel move. You pulled Becky out to add in Charlotte. That makes sense. Even though I hate that they did it, there's logic to it. Pulling out Kofi to put in Owens, who was a heel when he left and now I guess is a face or tweener, like, doesn't make any sense. And then basically swerving us by putting in Ali doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, I don't know. I think Doug's right. They don't know what they're doing. Look, the match itself was fine. The performers themselves are delivering, but the storylines and the writing behind it have been subpar, is the nice thing I can say about it. It's convoluted. It makes no sense. If there's one thing NXT has taught me, sometimes simple is much better. I don't need a very intricate, weaving authority figure. Just give me two guys who don't like each other who want to fight over a title. It works. Always has, always will. You don't need to. Sometimes extra's fine. Gargano and Ciampa is great. Enjoyed it. Sometimes I just want to see Velveteen and Black beat each other up. Cool. Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple, stupid. Right. But I echo your guys' thoughts. I mean, I think it's completely out left field. By the way, I just want to say one thing about Fastlane, that since we're not going to talk about it, but Elias,
Best part of the show.
man, that was the most entertaining thing from Fastlane, hands down. So
One thing I have to give Fastlane credit for before you go, that's 3 straight pay-per-views they've done well. I don't know what is going on with the WWE, despite their terrible booking. They haven't put on 3 good shows in a row since probably the 90s or maybe 2000, 2001.
wow.
I thought Fastlane was just okay. I didn't think it was anything spectacular. It was better than some of the stuff that they had been doing for sure. Royal Rumble, though, and Elimination Chamber were probably the best pay-per-views this year. Even Wrestle Kingdom, I didn't think was that great. And Royal Rumble, yeah, we were there, was a great show. Elimination Chamber, great show. Fastlane, okay show. WrestleMania, honestly, with how many matches they may or may not have, it's shaping up like it could be a really good show. Like WWE, they said at the end of the year, we're listening to the fans and we're gonna start doing right by you. Maybe they are. Like it sounds weird, but maybe they actually are doing right by us. Maybe they're trying to make things good and make us entertained, because I was looking forward to Fastlane and it was fine. I'm really looking forward to WrestleMania. I cannot wait to see it, because hopefully it's really good.
Oh, they'll screw this up. They always do.
Just don't watch the weekly show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about Aaron's favorite wrestler and Batista. So he returns, of course, and attacks Ric Flair. And then he tells Trips, Aaron's favorite wrestler, that he wants him at the greatest stage of them all, WrestleMania. Roger, what do you think about Aaron's favorite wrestler coming back to wrestle one more time against Batista?
You know, it's been a while since I've done this, but I can't think of a more appropriate time to say I defer the rest of my time to Aaron so that he can talk more about Triple H.
I just have one question for Aaron. I want him to tell me what he wants, what he really, really wants.
Give it to me.
Give me what I want.
Give me what I want.
So it's actually kind of funny. I believe it was like 5 months ago or so. I had said Triple H versus Batista. You know, they're kind of thinking about it for WrestleMania. And Roger, you had said, "Oh, no one wants to see that. No one's interested in that match." And I said, "I'm actually kind of interested. I think it could be good because, you know, just like with anything else, right? Like you could see a match, and if you let a lot of time go by, and then you actually see it again, and the characters are now on different areas, different playing fields, it could be good." I despised Triple H from, you know, during his reign of terror, right? It was like what, 02 or 03 until like 06, you know, whatever it was. Like I did not watch wrestling that much. I fast forwarded through everything he was in. That was one of the reasons that I have despised him as much as I do. With that said, and
You mean the
honestly,
greatest era in professional wrestling history?
exactly. And also, I did not like Batista either. I felt like Batista was just like Triple H's handpicked guy. And, you know, all the stories they were doing were just, okay, I know what's happening. I know what's going to happen. And it was boring to me. Fast forward, though, to 2019. Batista is a large movie star. Triple H has done very well for himself in booking, and he is a very different character now than what he was back then. I'm actually excited to see this match. I think it could be really good. The thing that's also interesting, too, is I could see Triple H winning this. I could really see him. And I think that makes it a very interesting prospect. Because if Triple H wins this match, you know, he has I think the largest losing record for WrestleMania. So he could win this very easily. But Batista, big movie star, he's got probably going to be the biggest movie of the year coming out in April. And so maybe they want to give him a little bit of a bump and have him beat Triple H. So I actually think that's going to be interesting. And I think that so far it's been pretty good. The end of Raw was very interesting. I was excited to see it. And I think that good things could come from it.
Aaron, we're going to give you another 3 minutes to talk about Triple H.
I defer my time to Aaron.
I defer my time to Aaron.
I have a question for Aaron, since this is going to be the Aaron Talks About Triple H segment. Going back to what we talked about, you know, I can understand what you were saying in the sense of, yeah, it's been a long time since we've seen that match. Well, you know what else it's been a long time since we had seen? Triple H and Shawn Michaels took on The Undertaker and Kane. Tell me, what were your thoughts on that match at the pay-per-view that shall not be named? Did you find yourself walking away going, I really wish I could see more of that?
No, not at all. But the difference is this. Shawn Michaels hadn't wrestled in 8 years. He had zero business being there. It was not the Shawn Michael of old. Shawn Michaels' style is not a big man style. Shawn Michaels' style is, you know, a little bit of high risk, very technical, very showman. That is Shawn Michaels' style, right? And Undertaker has needed to retire for 3 years. Undertaker, I like Undertaker. Undertaker needed to be gone a while ago. And that was something that I feel, you know, the fact that he is still like going at it, I don't get it. Kane is a mayor of a city in Tennessee. He doesn't need to be there either. Triple H was the only wrestler there that was, you know, worthwhile seeing. So I would say that Batista, who wrestles a big man style, it's going to be punches, it's going to be kicks, it's going to be big moves. There's not going to be anything off the top rope, and it's no holds barred. So it's going to be tables, it's going to be chairs, it's going to be a sledgehammer. And I mean, that's what it's going to be. So, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Do you think any of the other Guardians of the Galaxy will come out to assist Batista in defeating Triple H?
I think James Gunn will, for sure.
I was just going to ask, do you think James Gunn and his brother are going to come?
They're going to show off the guns?
Yep.
And maybe Rocket Raccoon, too.
If Batista stands really, really still, will Triple H be able to see him?
I don't think so.
Better question, could John Cena see him?
I just hope that he doesn't come out and snap his fingers. That's all I hope.
All right, so let's talk about one thing with NXT. So NXT is going to have something come up on the show. If I'm correct, it's going to be on this Wednesday. It's going to be Gargano's in the match still, but they're going to have a 5-way dance, winner takes all. So that's going to happen on Wednesday, and I don't know if we should spoil who won. Aaron, do you want to do the spoiling?
Is it a 5-way dance for the title?
It's a 5-way dance.
It's a 5-way.
Go ahead. I would say it's a 5-way dance on who's going to be Gargano's opponent at NXT TakeOver.
For what?
For the NXT title.
For the vacated title.
So it's a vacated championship.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Then I did not know about this, so I would say we should not spoil it for people who haven't heard this.
All right. So instead of spoiling it, all of our listeners should go out and get some web hosting from HostGator. Are you a blogger or podcaster, or are you just not happy with your web host? You can check out HostGator.com. You're going to find web hosting made easy and affordable. HostGator offers unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, one-click service results are free to hands-on the best control panel out there. Stop by today and try a free demo, see how easy it is. And if you use a special coupon code OFFTHEMARK, you're going to save 25% off your web hosting packages. So what do you got to lose? Check out HostGator.com and take a bite out of your web hosting costs. Also, make sure you check out Section 86's Off the Mark page and click on the banner at the top to save big on items from WShop.com. So we've been talking about doing this, or Aaron's had this in his mind for a while, and he has, and I think, as a group, we finally decided, yes, I think we should do this. Since everyone else has it, we're going to have our own. The first ever Off the Mark Hall of Fame. So we're gonna talk about our inductees, because this is the Mount Rushmore. No matter how you look at it, this is who you'd put on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. So since the winner of Pick'ems last year was Doug, he gets the first pick.
The first pick and the first nominee and acceptance into the Hall of Fame is going to be Randy Savage.
Yep, and that's going to
I can't think of any other person that deserves it even more than Randy Savage. He was my favorite wrestler growing up, despite the fact of certain people holding him down his whole career. But fantastic wrestler, wonderful. Probably the best match, I think, is still him versus Steamboat at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and of course that's going to be followed by Hulk Hogan, who had a very large contribution to the world of wrestling. Most people, whenever they think wrestling, they are going to associate with him.
Despite my protest, because I most certainly would have voted against him up until the part in which I realized that my contribution would also be denied for being a jerk, and that would be, in my opinion, the greatest in-ring performer of all time, and Shawn Michaels. I don't need to sit here and list his credentials, but let's be honest, over 3 decades, he probably put on the best series of matches I've ever seen, and is called Mr. WrestleMania for a reason.
And my first nominee is going to be Sting. Of course, WCW Sting, because he pretty much did everything in WCW, and we're not going to talk about his WWE career because that kind of stunk.
And I'm going to go ahead and, for my second pick, it was Bret Hart, WWE Bret Hart, not WCW Bret Hart, because he really didn't do too much there. But what he did for WWE, his technical wrestling, the fact that, so many fans love him, and whether he was heel, whether he was face, he did everything and was an all-time great champion.
Yeah, and then for me, it was Ric Flair. You got to go with the 16-time world champion, and realistically, there's even more than that. I think he calls himself a 21-time world champion. His contributions to NWA, WCW, and WWF are tremendous, and he definitely deserves a spot.
After that, I'm going to say the greatest all-around performer, so including drawing power, getting a character over, lasting power, the guy who will still get the largest pops no matter what company you're watching to, Stone Cold Steve Austin. While people will say Hogan built the WWF, Austin saved it. He turned the WWF into the monolith that is the WWE now, and without him, I think WCW beats them. So Austin, without a question, in my opinion, deserved to go in.
And I'm going with Andre the Giant. He, of course, was one of the biggest guys in wrestling and huge guy. But he also did a lot of good things for professional wrestling. Put him back on the map, and of course, he had the most memorable match against Hogan and WrestleMania 3. But just one, and also just a great person. So, but for our Hall of Fame class for this year, we'll have a part 2 later on. Yeah, but
I thought something that might be interesting, though, is because, for the most part, when we are doing the Hall of Fame inductees, especially the first couple rounds, they're going to be kind of shoo-ins, right? These are going to be people that go, yeah, of course they should be in. And, the next one, the second round, the third round, probably going to be very similar. But something that Roger had brought up that would be interesting are talking about people that, are they Hall of Fame worthy? People that might be on the 4th or the 5th round, where you are discussing them and you say, well, did they do it? And so that's where one of them that we had talked about that, realistically should probably be in the WWE Hall of Fame already, but who knows if he'll make it into ours, which is Owen Hart. And Owen Hart, of course, started off with Stampede Wrestling, but famously went to WWF and had about an 8-year career with them or so, and had famous feuds with his brother Brett, had feuds with, or fought alongside Yokozuna, fought Steve Austin, fought a number of people during his tenure there. Was an IC champion. I think he might have been a European champion. Was not a WWF champion though.
He was European
tag team champion as well. So Roger, it sounded like maybe you don't think that he's Hall of Fame worthy, or don't think that he would make it into our Hall of Fame. I was wondering if you could elaborate.
So if we were talking by WWE standards, based, I guess, on the idea that he's better than the worst people in there. I'm not saying that as a slight against Owen, but he, to me, is more important than Coco Beware. He's kind of my standard of like people who should not be in the Hall of Fame who are in the Hall of Fame. Let me say that I don't say this trying to speak ill of the dead. I think Owen was, from all accounts I've ever read, he was a great guy, genuine person. Obviously, what happened to him was a tragedy and it was very sad. I just don't know if we took away the sentimental value of what happened to him and kind of our memories of how tragic it was, how he was taking us from so early. And it wasn't like he died via drugs. He died via an accident that he should have never done. I don't know that we would believe that he was a Hall of Famer. Like he was never the guy on the show. Like Eddie Guerrero, for example, even though maybe he wasn't the guy, I can think of so many lasting memories from the team. So many moments, the reaction, the pop of when he beat Lesnar on No Way Out. To me, unquestioned, that guy. If you said Hall of Fame, yes. There will be other people, obviously, who I should not name again. There would be quite the lengthy debate on whether or not he should get in. But when you're talking about Owen, he was a great hand. He wasn't a particularly great talker. He has, off the top of my head, his 2 best feuds are with Bret Hart and Stone Cold. And there's nothing wrong with that. Both of those guys are great. But there's a reason that his best feuds were with Bret Hart and Stone Cold. By himself, he wasn't necessarily somebody that you came to see. He was great as part of the Hart Foundation. He was great as part of him and Yokozuna. I just don't know that Owen Hart himself, like if you were putting the Hart Foundation into the Hall of Fame, absolutely he's a part of them. But I think he's closer to Jim Neidhart, and I'd even put him below British Bulldog than I would say that he's closer to Bret Hart as far as, oh, you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Now, give me 16 or 17 rounds. Yeah, okay, we're having that discussion. But he's not on the Mount Rushmore. I wouldn't even call him one of the greatest IC champions of all time. And if you don't make that distinction, I have a hard time saying that you belong in with the elite of the elites.
So, Roger, you had said 16, 17 rounds. So, assuming that we put 8 in every single year, you don't think that he would make it in with the first 10 picks, which would be 80 people overall? You don't think he'd be in the top 80?
If we're talking all of wrestling, no. I mean, you're talking about throughout history. I could probably go through and find 80 guys. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I don't know if he was picked when we did our all-time draft. He might have been. I just don't recall him being picked. And that gives you kind of an example of where we think he would. Rick Rude was picked. Mr. Perfect was picked. A lot of mid-card guys were picked because they were memorable characters and they were memorable wrestlers. What is the most memorable thing Owen Hart truly ever did?
Broke Austin's neck.
And I obviously ignoring the tragedy that ended his life, the most memorable thing was him breaking Austin's neck. He had some good feuds. He had a fun feud with Brett, but I don't know what he had that was, there are no special moments really. His best match is the great match with Brett, I think at 10. And then past that, when you separated him from Brett, he was meh to me. Like, he was a good wrestler, but he was Lance Storm who with a little bit more high flying.
I think I've had enough of enough, and it's time for a change.
Oh my God, you nugget.
I was going to say, I'll make my case for Owen Hart to be in the WWE Hall of Fame, and the fact that, I mean, you are talking about some great matches that he had with Brett, with Stone Cold, when he was one of the members of the Nation of Domination. I mean, his feud with DX was excellent. I do agree that it is tough. I think it will be a little bit before we do put him in, just because of the fact that his career was cut short by such a tragedy. I think he was on his way up to becoming a WWE champion, and probably would have been several times a WWE champion. I know backstage he was beloved by everybody like that, and I think it was only just a matter of time before he really got his time to shine. Unfortunately, it just was cut short.
Yeah, and I will say I'm probably more on Doug's side. When thinking about what I had mentioned, Roger, I had mentioned to you that, the 80, right? And you had mentioned all of wrestling, which I 100% agree. If you think about all of wrestling, then yeah, maybe he doesn't make the top 80. But because we're so U.S. centric, and also we're focused on time from the 80s on, people that are from the earlier generation, we might not, really talk about. You think about a Greg Gagne, you think about, or Vern Gagne, you think about a Nick Bockwinkel, you think about, Jesse the Body Ventura, Greg the Hammer Valentine. People like that probably wouldn't make it into our top 80. And you go over to Japan and you talk about like Giant Baba or Antonio Inoki or Masawa, people like that who deserve to be. But because we are so U.S. focused, we probably aren't gonna, they probably wouldn't make it in there right away. And so like in Owen Hart, I'm not saying he would be my second, third, fourth round pick. But if we're going to 5 or 6, a lot of the people that I would have put in probably would already be in. A Kurt Hennig and a Rick Rude would be in. Whereas an Owen Hart, I could see him going in there in a 6 or 7 round. Just because of his contribution, because of what he had done. As Doug had mentioned, what he had done with the Nation of Domination, what he did with the Hart Foundation, his matches that he had. I mean, his feud with Brett, you had mentioned that. But I feel that feud, because of how long it had gone on for, it was one that was actually worth watching. It was one that was actually interesting. And his match with Brett was really good. Even his match against Stone Cold was pretty decent for what it was at the time. He was not the guy by any means, but I feel like he was somebody that you were very happy to see when you got him.
Let me challenge you guys on 2 points. And it's funny because you've kind of made my point about if you take away the tragedy of what happens, I think we remember him differently. Both of you mentioned his Nation of Domination run. His Nation of Domination run sucked. Like, let me make no bones about it. It is not what you guys think it was. He was long past his prime. The best thing about Owen in the Nation was Jason Sensation impersonating him in DX. Like, Owen was not good in the Nation just because it didn't make sense. Like, for all intents and purposes, the Nation of Domination was a black supremacy group. Why was a white Canadian part of it? Like, that didn't really make any freaking sense.
That's how great he was.
That's, what? Cool. I'm glad that he was so, into harmony.
He identified as.
Oh, well, then, you know what? Cool. He's in. We invited him to the barbecue. It's all good. And then, yeah, he had some great, but when you took him away from his brother, what did he honestly do? Austin's feud was basically Owen versus Austin was basically Brett versus Austin when Brett moved on.
But during that time, though, if you think about the WWF, it was in the mid-90s when they were terrible. And who were the mainstays there at that time? You had HBK, Bret Hart, Undertaker, Owen Hart?
If your argument is that a guy was a mainstay because the company was terrible, aren't you kind of proving my point?
No. What I'm saying is this. Despite having such terrible talent there, he was able to stand out.
I disagree that he stood out.
You don't think that you don't think that he had some good matches? You don't think that, when you look at, like, when WWF, when they talk about the 90s, they don't talk about Doink that much. They don't talk about their, colorful characters that they had, or, the crazy things that they were trying to do. Instead, they try to focus on some of the wrestling. And in particular, Owen Hart is typically somebody who was in that centerpiece.
Yeah. Yes. He would be one of the wrestlers that you would say, like, yeah, we had some good wrestling while WCW was focused on the old guys. But if you talk about guys when we identify with the 90s, you're talking 2 eras of 90s. Late 90s is Attitude Era. So we're not talking about that, because by then Austin and his group of people, D-Generation X, those guys had really taken over. Early 90s is Bret Hart, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels. It's those 3. Those are your pillars of the company. Everybody else was second tier. Kind of second off, I think Doug mentioned about how, like, Owen might have been the champion. until the brand split, there was no chance in hell Owen would have ever sniffed the WWF Championship. You're talking about one title where Stone Cold, Triple H, The Rock, The Undertaker, and Kane, and Mankind were all on the roster. There's no way in hell Owen Hart would have ever been champion. Like, there's just no room. Ken Shamrock was above him on the pecking order. Chris Jericho, the moment he came into the company, was above him in the pecking order, though he may have come in after Owen died.
He did.
I mean, it's just, yeah, there's just, Owen was, I think he had one title shot, maybe, and it was basically, proving my point, the only reason he was given that title shot was because Brett got screwed at Montreal. Like, he was never, even with the hottest angle behind him, ever looked at as a guy that you would build around. He was a steady hand.
But during that time, like if you look at 98, like the end of 98 to the beginning of 2000, the title changed hands. I think it was 12 times or so. During that time. So I actually agree with Doug. I think that Owen would have had a chance to have the title.
Look at those people who had the title. Tell me how many mid-carders held the championship there.
Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon is not Owen Hart. I agree with you on that one. But it's I can tell you every single one of them. It's Rock, Austin, Foley, Undertaker, Kane.
But if Mankind, because it wasn't even Mick Foley, it was Mankind. If Mankind can hold the title, you don't think that Owen Hart would have had a chance to?
Mankind was arguably the second most over superstar in 98. Owen Hart was never the second most. Yeah. Behind Austin, Mick Foley was going nuts. Absolutely. Do you remember the pop that people, he was so over. People loved Sokka. Rock and Sokka ended up becoming a huge thing later on. Mankind, the moment he got thrown off the cell, we have seen that clip so many. He is an iconic. There are no iconic Owen Hart moments. And I like Owen as a wrestler. I'm not trying to disparage him. The most iconic thing he ever did was break Austin's neck. Like that is oh my God, Andy. But the truth be told, right? Like Mick Foley became a main event superstar the moment Undertaker launched him off the cell. Like Owen Hart never broke that glass ceiling. At best, he could have been Christian to Brett's Edge. That was his ceiling. And that's fine. I love Christian. But Christian is not one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. You wouldn't look at him and go, oh, yeah, that's the guy you build a company around. How long was Christian's title reign? Like 5 days before Orton beat him? That was the best for Owen, and that only happened in a brand split. 2 days? That's even worse.
Well, technically, because SmackDown was, I think, on Thursday nights, but they taped on Tuesday.
He got 5 days. So, Owen was never going to sniff that championship. Look at all the mid-carders who were above. Ken Shamrock never was a champion. Kane was only a champion for like a day. And Kane was way further up the pecking order than Owen Hart was. Like, no, Owen would have never been champion. He was really only IC champion just to drop it to Austin. Like, he was a European champion. He's a Tier champion. And for the most part, he was the guy who jobbed out while Brett was in the main event feuds. That was Owen's role. He was a tag team with the Bulldog. Bulldog main evented SummerSlam 92. Owen Hart, I think, main evented one pay-per-view in his career, and it was as part of a tag team. I want to say it's Canadian Stampede in Your House. That's it. He just was never looked at as the guy. I think he was closer to retirement than he was ascending up the main event ladder. I really think he was close to done, which is what makes what happened to him so much sadder, is that he was on his way out of the business. He was going to go live his life.
Or he could have been actually going to WCW too, and he would have had a better shot. He would have had a good shot at becoming champion, I think, there. But we will never know, unfortunately. So
he wasn't old enough to be champion in WCW.
Well, yeah, I guess you have to be over 40, right? And washed up from the WWE. All right, well, that's a good. I think everyone made some good points about, especially with Owen, whether or not he should be in, and whether he will be in. So I guess that's something we'll have to discuss later on. But I think around SummerSlam, we're gonna go ahead and nominate 4 people, and then we'll debate on who should go in and why, and maybe why they won't. But it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to this, actually. So anyway, so that's all the time we have for this month's show. If you're into the Twitter, you can follow the show at OffTheMark86. I want to thank 86 Productions for hosting and ending the podcast, and I want to thank all of our listeners for taking the time to download and listen to the show. And for Roger Cave, Doug Hunt, and Aaron Hughes, I am Andrew Hughes, and until next time, we'll see you in the ring.